Good lighting is essential for comfort and safety in any workshop. So today I'm going to show you how I solved that problem in my workshop, and also what I did to take it to the next level to make what I think is some of the best lighting to create YouTube videos. For many years, I put up with bad lighting in garages and workshops. I remember one garage I used to work in just had one 60-watt bulb, which really didn't help you see very much at all. So having good lighting when you're working makes things easier, safer, and just generally improves the conditions and makes even the nastiest of garages more pleasant to be in. And believe me, buying some decent lights and spending a few hours on a Saturday morning installing them will immediately transform and improve the worst garage or workshop more than anything else you can possibly do to it. So after trying and experimenting different types of lights, I've settled on these 2-foot square 48-watt LED type panel lights. Now these are the sort of things that you'll normally see installed in a standard ceiling grid in an office or a shop maybe. They generally come with quite a white light. This one I think is 6,500 Kelvin, but that's actually what I'm looking for. I want it fairly white in here for filming. And because it emits a light over a large area, if you've got this over a workbench, it tends to cut down on the shadows because the light's coming from lots of different areas. Now these ones I bought from Amazon, and I've tried them out a few times and they stay really cool. So I'm quite happy to mount this next to a surface. But you do really need a frame because they don't come with a frame. You can buy frames, but that actually adds to the cost quite a bit. So today I'm going to show you how I made frames for these, and also what I've done to help me use these in a better way for filming my videos in here in the workshop. So let's go back to when I started making the frames for these a long time ago in a garage far away. My original idea was to cut a square rebate into a piece of 2x2. Without a table saw, this was going to be challenging to say the least. So I changed my idea to gluing 2 pieces of timber together to form the same sort of shape. I'm using 2 different thicknesses of MDF here and cutting thin strips with my skill saw, then cutting and gluing them over length so I can come back and cut miters at the ends to form each corner. I use a straight edge to help line up the 2 pieces and then pin them together. None of this process is difficult, but making 12 in total means a lot of gluing and cutting. The miter corners I also just glued and pinned together. These frames don't need to be very strong. They're more like just adding a perimeter to the light rather than adding any strength. Making 12 of these means that the whole process did drag on a bit, but you've just got to keep going until you finish. Almost 18 months later, and I'm glad I packed these frames up properly to keep them clean and undamaged, because since then I've moved house and they've also been stored for many months in a corner of the garage that I don't use very much. In fact, it's the dark side. Okay. So what I'm going to do with these is fit hinges on one side and magnets on the other. So when I install them, I can pull them down and they can hang vertically and emit light horizontally to improve the lighting for my filming. I often set up ad hoc lighting using the same panel lights clamped to timber to give me extra horizontal light at various points during the filming process. Being able to pull down the lights at a moment's notice will help a lot. But before I can do that, I think I better check that the magnets I bought can actually do the job. Before testing the magnets, I need to put a frame and a light together. Although I made the frame so I'd get a tight fit, I still need to secure the lights in them, and I use these glazing points just to pin the lights into the frame. Quite often they sell these with a special tool to help you push them in, but I went for the cheaper option and I used a mini nail bar, which worked perfectly for me. All of the materials I'm using today, like these pins and the lights and magnets and the flush hinges, I'll have links for in the description below this video. The frame and the light weighs just over 2.5 kilograms or 5.5 pounds, so I screw one of the magnets into the underside of my workbench and rig up a metal plate fixed to a block of wood and a hook to see how much it would carry. For some reason I still have a bucket of granite in the workshop, so I use that and reduce it to 1.5 kilograms to see if the magnet can hold that. Which it did quite easily, so I continue adding stone until it fails. Which worked out to be just slightly less than the total weight of the light and the frame together. So 2 magnets will easily take 50% of the weight. In each frame I need to fix 2 hinges and 2 magnets, so I make a simple jig to make sure each one is uniform and to save me measuring 100 times. I found a Forstner bit slightly bigger than the magnets to use to recess them into the frame. And after clearing out the fluffy MDF type material, I realise I've over drilled and the magnet is now too recessed. So time to use the famous Donkey Don cards. In fact, any playing cards will do here. You don't have to particularly use Donkey Don. Depending on how many folds, this packs the magnet out, so I end up with it just protruding. Turning from woodwork to electrics now, as I've wanted thin frames for my lights, I'm very aware that the transformer that goes with each light hasn't got enough room to sit below the ceiling, so it's going to have to sit in the loft. This, together with wanting some extra slack in the cable so the lights can move up and down, means I have to lengthen the low voltage cable from the transformer to the light. So I cut through this and splice a 4-foot length of 0.5mm cable. Using a cable of this size, I don't think I'm going to get any significant voltage drop, and because I'm working on the low voltage side of the transformer, I don't have nearly the same risks as on the main side. It's important to know though that if you're going to do this and add lights as a DIY or homeowner, you can if your building already has a lighting circuit in place. If, however, you need to make any changes to the consumer unit or put in a new circuit, you'll need to employ a qualified electrician to conform to the UK building regs. The additional cable I firstly tin with solder, then remembering to slip over the heat shrink insulation before soldering, I solder the wires together. Each one I test before fixing them into the loft permanently. So coming to the installation, using my laser level, I set it back up on some marks I made earlier. These set out the lighting grid in one direction, and I use some spare magnets to find the joists in the other. I employ my homemade jig again to help me drill for the hinge fixings. These marks I've set the laser on I made when I installed the plasterboard for my ceiling, at which point I also put in some additional strengthener pieces in between the roof truss joists, so I have a good fixing above the plasterboard for both the hinge and the plate that the magnet fixes to. Screwing just into plasterboard won't give you a good enough fixing for lights, especially ones moving like these. So although it looks like I'm screwing into plasterboard, I'm actually screwing through into the chipboard above. Where I don't have strengthener pieces in place, where I've changed the position of a couple of lights recently, I use some ply glued to the top surface of the plasterboard with some spare plaster, just to give the fixing some strength. To work out exactly where the magnet plate needs to go, I simply mark the magnet with a marker and then push it up against the ceiling where it leaves a faint mark. Once the light and the frame is in place, I can drill a hole near the hinge side and feed the cable from the loft into the light. So if you're going to do this, I think it's important to say that you really need to make sure your magnets are strong enough to hold these things up all the time. You don't want them to come down unexpectedly at a later date. I've got a factor of safety of over 2, which I'm happy about. And just before anyone else writes in, the other safety factor I've got is even if they do come down, they're not going to hit me on the head. On the blade, if I undo this, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, please check out. So in this box I've got lots of good things like the instructions. So I'm really pleased with the lighting in here now. It's nicely spaced out with no dark areas, and to be able to really quickly modify them will help me enormously and speed up the process. And to have plenty of light coming from the right direction always helps the quality of the final product. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Remember, Patreon membership is now open. The membership is steadily increasing after we launched it a week and a half ago. We're soon coming up to our 100th member. So it'd be great to see you over there for the extra content and the extra weekly video as well. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe and hit that bell notification button as well. So until next week, and I'm just thinking, I could probably start growing in here, couldn't I? I'll see you then.